Gentlemen, have a microphone. On. Yours isn't, though. Brian, are we good? Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the October 5th meeting of the Temple Terrace City Council. It is certainly a pleasure to see so many people here tonight. If you would, please stand and join our Vice Mayor in the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear Father in heaven, we thank you tonight for the guardian angels you've gathered around us. They wear fire and police uniforms. They work in the medical field. They do research to enrich and save our lives. May we act with them in mind as we do our work on council and as we strive to do our part to keep our citizens safe. And so, in the many names we call you, all God's people said, Amen. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everybody. Again, it's a pleasure to see so many people here. So we obviously have a lot of people to speak tonight, and that's a good thing. So here's how we will do it, and we will hear from everybody who wants to speak. There are two groups of people, one who are here to speak on items on the agenda. We only have one item, and that's the proposed mountain bike trail, and I know a number of you are here for that reason because I have requests to speak from a lot of you on that topic. If you are here to speak on an item not on the agenda, that's at a different point in the meeting. And so there are forms in the back of the room available, but I would ask that you fill out the forms if you want to pass them out, and give your form to the city clerk to my left, and she will pass it down and we'll make sure that everybody is heard. Whether you are here for the proposed mountain bike trail or on any other item, we do limit comments to 3 minutes. Obviously, with this many people, 3 minutes can take a while. That's okay. We will listen to everybody who wants to address the council. Then you'll be given your full 3 minutes. We do ask that there are no do-overs. If you get 3 minutes and then you hear other speakers speak and you want to speak again, you've had your 3 minutes. Otherwise, this could go on for 3 or 4 days. So one person, 3 minutes, and that's a good. So we're all good with that? Everybody understands? Okay, good enough. So first item on the agenda is the approval of the September 21st council meeting minutes.
So moved. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any adjustments, corrections to the minutes? If not, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Minutes are approved. Thank you. So now we get to persons wishing to be heard on items not on the agenda. Now we do have one caveat that I forgot to mention. If we get too many people, we do have a procedural rule that we cap this at 30 minutes so that we can proceed with the meeting if it goes beyond 30 minutes. And then at the end of the meeting, we will then pick that back up and hear from anybody else who wants to address items not on the agenda. So currently I have no requests to speak for items not on the agenda. Is there anybody who wishes to address the council on items not on the agenda? Okay, very good. Next item on the agenda, and the only item on the agenda, is a resolution approving an agreement with the Swamp Mountain Bike Club Incorporated. Leisure Services Director Carl Langfeld will explain. Welcome, Director Langfeld.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. I'm here tonight to request approval of an agreement between the City of Temple Terrace and the Swamp Mountain Bike Club Incorporated for the development and management of off-road bicycle trails located at Riverfront Preserve. Back on April 6th, the Swamp Mountain Bike Club approached City Council and made a presentation showing the benefits of constructing mountain bike trails out at Riverfront Preserve. At the meeting, council agreed to move forward to develop a plan for the development of those off-road bicycle use at Riverfront Preserve. Since that time, staff has been working with representatives from Swamp, and the city's legal department to develop an agreement for the construction and continued maintenance of the bicycle trails. In order to move forward with a plan to put in bicycle trails at Riverfront Preserve, due to the management plan that that property operates under through Florida Communities Trust, which, for lack of it, provides oversight to environmental lands throughout the state, we needed to submit to them a request to modify our management plan to allow the usage of off-road bicycle trails at that property. That request was submitted. A modification of the plan was sent to Florida Communities Trust, and approval was received. Documentation of that was included in your agenda packet. Pending approval of agreement, work on the trails, construction of the trails, layout of the trails would begin in early November with an early estimate of opening of first trails for usage sometime in early 2022. Layout of the trails would be conducted in cooperation between the city representatives, myself, and members from Swamp Mountain Bike Club, Natural Trail Builders, which is a professional trail building company, and an environmental scientist that they have who helps guide them and to put trails in areas so as not to disturb sensitive lands, areas with protected species of plants, so that way we can optimize the usage of the property for the off-road bicycle usage, but not to provide any negative effects to the lands that are on site. So again, tonight we are requesting approval of an agreement between the city and Swamp for the development and management of off-road bicycle trails on the Riverfront Preserve. I stand for any questions. In addition, Shane Richardson, president of Swamp, is in attendance, as well as a representative from Natural Trail Builders, should you have any additional questions that they may be better equipped to answer than I am.
Very good, Mr. Langfield, thank you. Prior to questions, council will take public comment. I have a number of requests to speak. Mr. Langfield, I suspect will probably have some questions. I know I do after the public comment section. The first person on my list is Brandon Smith. Welcome, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, sir. Brandon Smith, 7816 Capwood Avenue, Temple Terrace, Florida, 33637. Thank you, council members and everyone here in support and not of support of the bike trails. The only reason why I'm here is because I can see both sides. I live in this community. I love my community. We have been, I think that our community is a shining light in Temple Terrace. I mean, the number of things that we do for the community and the walk score of our community. A lot of people exercise at our community, and we're starting to see a lot more people come out and exercise. Me and my girls, we go back there in the bike trail a lot. We love that trail. We call it the jungle. We walk around in there, and while I love walking around our community, I love getting out there in nature with my girls. We have lots of trails around the areas. However, it is nice to have something right there in our community. Not many people go back there in our neighborhood, and that is what I love about it. Is that I feel safe walking with my girls back there, and we're there. And if we could ride a trail that's right there next to our neighborhood, that'll be awesome. But at the same time, I don't want the animals to get hurt. So I am thankful for the professionals and people taking notice of the animals. Ever since the housing developments come up, I mean, that's been a huge thing to me is our animals and our wildlife being affected by this. So I'm thankful for people standing up with that and taking a special interest in our animals. But at the same time, for y'all hearing our plea on the trail, I'm approve of the bike trail within limits. And I think that everyone's taking special interest in those limits in which we do it. As long as that we're safe with our animals and and we're not, we don't want to put no burden on the community. Because there has been issues with people dumping trash back there as well. And our city members should not be picking up any unnecessary debris or an overflow of that. But I'm not going to take up this whole time because there's a lot of other people. But thank you so much for hearing us out on this. And that's just my side of the story.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Have a good evening. Thank you. Next person is Shelley Frank. Good evening, Ms. Frank.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, council members, and audience. Thank you very much for allowing us to speak on this. I'm at 9206 Knights Branch Street, 33637. I want to say that I am in favor of partnerships, public-private partnerships. I think this is a fantastic idea, and I think that the company has shown that they are eco-friendly. And I really want to thank the city for working closely with them on all the rules and regulations to keep our wildlife safe as well. I won't take any more of our time. I know we have a busy night, but I'm in favor. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Frank. Next speaker is John Hess. Welcome, Mr. Hess.
Thank you, Councilman. My name is John Hess. I live at 7820 Bullard Drive. My concern is with this is the animals, the wildlife. We've seen Amazon go in, the wildlife was abandoned. You heard news about the animals in people's backyards because they were torn out of their homes. We now have the golf course just was torn down, and wildlife from that area is already scattering. I know in our backyard, I have a family of raccoons that just came in. I do like the influx of the birds now in my backyard because the golf course was torn all out. I don't believe that a complete plan can be put in place to protect the animals that live there. I mean, there's a construction barrier that was put in place for the construction of the golf course being torn down. That's already been ripped to allow the bikes to go back in the back path. So how much respect are animals going to be given? Since the golf course has been torn down, I haven't seen a turtle in that area yet. That's right, that entrance is right at my back gate. I walk in that park, I would almost say daily. Yesterday, 2 times. I have seen decrease of animals, and I think with this with more developing, and now their true home, we're going to see less of them. All right, when you talk about the gopher turtles, box turtles, bicycle running around there, I'm sure they're just going to have the ample time to stop and ensure the safety of that turtle. So I appreciate the time. That's all I have.
Good. Thank you very much, sir. Next speaker is Lynn Smalley. Welcome, Mrs. Smalley.
Hi, Marilyn Smalley, I go by Lynn, 7822 River Ridge Drive. I've been a resident since 1984 and love this city. My husband and I just heard about this last week. We are neighbors of the preserve. We have been involved with things in the past trying to keep behind our house, to the left of our house, our older house, pristine for the animals, as my friend just was talking about. We sent 23 questions about the bike trails that are proposed, and thank you to Charles Stevenson for the prompt and informative answers. One question was not answered. Will there be a decision this evening? And I don't know if you can answer that. Yes, okay. I'm just going to talk about the events, parking, and location of the bike trails. I know other people have other things to say. One of my questions was about the parking and the events at the preserve. Charles tells us that yes, family events and skill events for children would be held. No bike races would be organized at this location. There are 7 parking spots, including a handicap spot. I asked about parking. Where are people going to park when they have these events? And I was told that there would be, on the south side of the entry road to the preserve, people could park on the grass. I'm guessing all our blue shirts here are here because they're bikers. They love to be out in nature. I've gone to websites that you guys have, and they seem like a bunch of nice people. If they all come for an event, where are they parking? If they all have children on bikes, where are all these people going to be in our preserve? I kind of gave up on it. I figured you were going to go ahead and do it until I saw the map today. Can we show the map to everybody? Can it be broadcast
Ryan,
up
can you
there?
bring the map up?
The whole idea of the word preserve doesn't kind of match. As you can see, the red lines are the existing walking trails now. You come in from the east, and there's 3 trails. There's the Palmetto Trail, which is the first trail on the right. There's the Riverfront Trail, which is that loop to the back to the river, and then there's the Pavilion Trail to the west. It looks to me like the bike trail is parallel to everything I do back there. When I'm taking pictures of wildflowers, when I'm looking for my gopher tortoise, when I'm looking at the armadillo holes. I will not be able to hear my birds, and I will not be able to see my animals and enjoy the pristine conditions here in a preserve if there's bike trails right next to me, 5 feet, 10 feet away. I kind of assumed that question mark on the left, and I don't know if that's expansion or what. If the trails were over there, it might not be so impacting on the people who've been using the preserve to walk and to observe the alligators and everything in nature. So my big concerns are the parking. If this many people shows up, they'll all be on 78th Street in our neighborhood parking. If they have events, and the location of the bike trails, to me, there'll be no peace and quiet back there. If you look at the map, they're just parallel. And there are intersections, which will not be real safe when a bike crashes into me when I'm walking on my trail, and I've got my phone out and I'm taking a picture of some flowers. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Next speaker is William Smalley. Good evening, sir.
Hello, folks. William Smalley, 7822 River Ridge Drive. My first concern is of a technical nature, Counselor. I spoke with Rebecca Woods in Tallahassee. She's with the Department of Environmental Protection. Apparently, Temple Terrace submitted a modification request for this preserve. It's not a park, it's a preserve, in June. It was approved July 14th without her knowing or her staff knowing that there were objections to this. The adjacent property owners were not noticed. There was no notice at the entrance to this preserve, and I'm wondering why not? Ma'am?
You don't ask questions, sir, you just.
Okay. Anyway, nobody, and there's property owners adjacent to this here that did not receive any kind of notice. I also sat today with Charles Stevenson here in City Hall, and he was kind enough to go over this site plan with me. Do you have this you can show with just the yellow arrows? Yes. That is the current footpath situation in this preserve. Where'd it go? Okay, the purple that we're looking at now would be all the paths that are planned to be put in.
I think we have it up now, Mr. Smalley.
Yeah, that's the footpaths as they exist today. And the purple one is what they want to develop. This is an extremely sensitive environment, teeming with animals and bird life. This project is too large. I'm against it. I hope you vote it down. The vast areas here are palmetto groves. I know the effort involved in clearing palmetto groves. You're going to need chainsaws and probably front-end loaders to make paths in palmetto groves. I envision this taking many months to clear this many paths. Please do not turn this preserve into a bike playground. Please do not drive our wildlife off our preserve. That includes gopher tortoises and limpkins, which are endangered. This is too much, too soon. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Thomas Feely. Welcome, Mr. Feely.
Thank you. Again, my name is Thomas Feely. I live at 7808 River Ridge Drive. I'd like to start up at saying, you know, I am a bicycle enthusiast. I've probably biked more miles in my lifetime than most people in this room throughout the United States and Canada. So I'm not opposed to bicyclists, but I'm angry, and I don't mean to come across in a real negative way, but I was part of the group 10 years ago that dealt with the preserve when the road was being built. And we worked very closely with members of the City Council and Parks and Rec and the people that were a part of that project at that time. We worked very closely with them. I remember 10 years ago meeting in a room at the rec center where we finally, you know, worked through our issues and came out to a satisfactory agreement. And we were absolutely promised, assured, that this preserve would remain a preserve. We were assured by every single person there not to worry. Yes, we needed to build this road. It was part of the contract when we bought the property through ELAP. But they said it's going to remain trails like it is now for pedestrian travel. And that became very important to us because, like a lot of people in my neighborhood, I walk that preserve every single day, actually twice a day. Many of us walk our dogs on leash throughout those trails. And that preserve means so much to us. But to have that taken away, the promises that were made to us taken away, just really hurts because we were assured that that would not happen 10 years ago. And I got to tell you, it really hurts to have our city council plan something out, or Parks and Rec, plan something out without even consulting us after all that we went through 10 years ago. So I'm really upset. I agree with my neighbors. I love the nature of I love being able to walk in nature. And I've seen on that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it appears that there are intersections between the proposed bicycle trails and the walking trails. It also appears to me, and maybe the map was just drawn that way, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but there are places where we're having to share the same trail for a portion of the time with the bicyclists. That may be just my perception of what the map is showing. I don't know. But I fear for myself and my neighbors who are elderly, and in terms of the safety of that proposal. And so I oppose it. Thank you.
Sir. Next speaker is Lucas Hutchins. Welcome, Mr. Hutchins.
Good afternoon. My name is Lucas Hutchins, and I live at 7804 River Ridge Drive. The preserve backs up to my house. And I understand a lot of the neighbors' concerns, but I think this is a good idea. I'm for it. We need stuff to do. We have a lot of new people moving into our neighborhood, teenagers, and there's just not a lot to do. This preserve is useless right now. It does nothing. There's nothing out there. There's drugs. There's people dumping trash all the time. There's people having sex out there all the time. There's people camping out there at nighttime. We have homeless people living out there. I mean, I see trouble out there every single day. I'm tired of it. I want us to use this. What's the point of having a preserve if we can't even? I don't like to go out there anymore. It's not fun anymore. You used to be able to ride your bikes and everything through there before we put this road in. It's useless now. I mean, I'm tired of all the trouble back there. I mean, if we have this and we can have more people going out there, we can start having good things happening out there instead of all these illegal activities. I like the idea. I think it would bring more people to our subdivision to have fun. I mean, everybody likes to ride. We have so many people that live in our subdivision that ride bikes every day throughout. I see it all the time, and there's just nowhere to ride. We're tired of riding on the street. I mean, we need somewhere. Temple Terrace does not have a lot to do. We're bored. We've got parks for the kids, but there's not a lot here. We need something for my age of people. We like to ride. We want to do this. This is the first thing I can agree that Temple Terrace has done in a long time. I love this idea. I want to see change. We have to adapt to change. A lot of people don't like change, but we have to change. Everywhere else is changing. South Tampa is changing. All the other cities are changing. We need change. We want to bring younger people in here. We want a community, a family community. We have a lot of elderly people here, but we've got to bring in those younger people, so we have to have stuff for them to do. While I understand about the parking is one of my only concerns, I don't want more parking put in, but I mean, there's a whole street, people can just park on the sides, I mean, on the grass and everything. That's really, to me, not a concern. And the fact that Swamp is going to maintain it, because right now the city's not maintaining it. It's a jungle out there. It's all overgrown. It's dangerous. The paths are all trees falling over. I mean, no one can even get out there. And then we have a gazebo at the end, which is useless. It's just vandalized. It's spray painted. It's destroyed. People have fires out there all the time. I mean, this is just, to me, doesn't make any sense. We need something. I mean, if we can't do this, then we need to figure something else out to do there, because I'm tired of just having all this trouble that we have out there. It's time to bring change to Temple Terrace and have stuff for people to do. I think this is an amazing idea. So I'm for it, and I wish we can do this. I want to say yes to this. Thank you for my time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good evening. Prior to the next speaker, I'd like to remind everybody in the gallery to please remember that everybody who wishes to address us will get their 3 minutes. Pro, con, somewhere in between. We're all neighbors. And so if there's a speaker is saying something that you personally don't agree with, please keep it to yourself, and I'll demand the same from them. So we need to respect each other. We have different viewpoints, and that's okay. We're all neighbors. We're all proud residents of Temple Terrace, but we're going to allow the speakers to speak in peace, okay? So the next speaker, and thank you for that, is Angel Haya. Am I saying that correctly? Is it Haya or Haya, sir?
It is Aya.
Haya, I thought so.
Imagine it's an I instead of
I thought so.
Yeah.
I'm working on it.
All right. So I'm Angel Aya. I live at 7804 River Ridge Drive. I am for it. I love the concept behind it. I like how they're talking about they want to preserve the actual wildlife out there. They want to preserve the nature aspect of the preserve, whilst making it accessible for people who want to go out there and walk and ride their bikes. I think it's a good idea. A good deal is when both parties walk away unhappy. So there's a lot of people that are upset, so maybe Swamp does need to change a couple of things to help appease some of these people. It won't be the end of the world. Some people will still be upset it went through. They'll live. The world goes on. Life happens. My biggest concern when I first heard about it was the wildlife. I don't want anything happening to the wildlife out there. I'm pro-animal. But at the same time, I want it to be usable for me, for other people, for anyone who lives in Temple Terrace who wants to say, hey, let's go ride our bikes through this nice area where we've got some mountain biking, some nature trails to walk through. So in short, I am for it. I just want to see like what other things may be happening or may not be happening. The city and Swamp working together to keep the preserve preserved. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker is Dennis Hand. Good evening, Mr. Hand.
Good evening. Thank you, City Council, for hearing me. My name is Dennis Hand. I am a resident of Temple Terrace. I live at 9303 Rolling Ridge Place. I live 1 block from the entrance to the park. Can I hand pictures? There's one for each, for you to take just a quick look at, if possible, without offending anyone.
To the city clerk, and she'll pass them down.
Pictures on the left are what I took Saturday morning at our preserve. Pictures on the right are what I took of Morris Bridge bike paths and hiking trails. The difference is incredible between just the two. Unfortunately, my dog's there. She photobombed for, unfortunately, she wanted to get in the picture. I walk the preserve at least 5 to 6 times a week. I was upset when they put the road in. I got over it. I realized, yeah, this is not too bad. We can still deal with this. I, again, live a block from the opening, the gate, the electric gate that keeps people out when it's not open. I'm sorry, just give me just a second here. But again, my dog and I walk back there every day. Larry was the tortoise that we saw. We haven't seen Larry for about a month and a half now. I've watched 3 generations of foxes grow up along the golf course and along 78th Street in a little retention pond there. City of Temple Terrace is a city of trees. It's a beautiful place for nature. I don't think that a preserve in any way is supposed to be something that's entertaining to a sport. Mountain biking is a sport. If you've gone to their website, the very front page of their website says, "Let's get rad together." I own a mountain bike. I've never ridden it on the trails. It's not supposed to be happening. It's a rule, it's a law, it's a regulation that a good citizen of Temple Terrace should honor. Without offending anyone, how many of you have actually been to the preserve? Anyone? Okay. You're stewards of this. We're all stewards of the land. My granddaughter and I walk back there. It's wonderful. She loves it. We listen to the owls. There's owls here. The red-tailed foxes, the raccoons, the armadillos, all of these animals live there now. They used to live on the golf course, because at night when the lights go out, that's when the golf course comes alive with the animals. They're gone. There's no place for them to live. There's no grass for the field mice. There's nothing for the hawks. Everybody has moved into the preserve, which is what it's supposed to be. Now we're going to push them out a little bit further. I'm very much opposed to it. I appreciate your time. I really, really don't want to see this pass through. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker is Annette Rennie. Welcome, Mrs. Rennie. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm going to take this down because I feel like I'm talking through a shield. Annette Rennie, 9512 Woodland Ridge Drive. All of you who know me know that I'm an animal activist. I mean, I will save anything, including a vulture. We were guaranteed, Tom Feely is right, we've worked with the city and with the group, and we're guaranteed that that would remain a preserve, something to protect nature, something to protect the animals, peaceful, quiet, walking areas. We don't have to develop everything. You know, there's Flatwoods, there's Wilderness Park, there's Lettuce Lake Park. Those are all biking areas. This is peaceful preserve, meaning preservation. The birds you see back there are amazing. The foxes with their kits, you know, their babies. I mean, this is what we were told would remain, and we were guaranteed it would never change. I plead with you, do not go forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Rennie. Next speaker is Grace Sanders. Good evening, Mrs. Sanders.
Hi, Grace Sanders. I live at 7810 River Ridge Drive. I've lived there for 38 years. We were one of the first houses built there. And I abut the preserve, and I also have a beautiful view of the river. I see so many different wonders. I've seen coyotes, foxes, otters, family of otters, hawks, you name it, I've seen it throughout those years. And, you know, I was also one of the ones who met 10 years ago about the preserve. It was designated to keep it in its natural state and protect the animals while also having the public enjoy the setting. I saw this for the first time today, the proposed bike course path. I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. It looked like a competitive race course. Now, I have friends that belong to the bicycle groups. They bike hard, fast, and you know, they love rough terrain and so forth. So it's not going to be, it's going to be a bicycle path, so they're just going to bicycle. I mean, this looks like a competitive course. It's just also breaks my heart that instead of keeping it as a preserve, as a footpath, which I'm sure if you have children that want to bike on the footpath, that's allowed. So it bothers me when I read on your agenda today that this organization that has, I don't know how many members, it has an agreement, it's going to have an agreement with the city of Temple Terrace to develop and manage. First of all, why are we doing this? Why are they designing it? Why do we want them to develop and manage? If I want to walk on the bike path instead of the footpath, am I allowed to do that? How long is this agreement? Can this be revoked? Is this a yearly agreement that has to be renewed? That preserved, you have jurisdiction, but it belongs to the citizens of Temple Terrace and Hillsborough County. And I feel that it's going to take over. It's going to take over the preserve. On this map, I see question marks. What does that mean for future development? Are we going to allow them to just totally occupy and control the preserve? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sanders. The last request to speak I have is from Roger Sanders. Welcome, Mr. Sanders.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity of speaking to you. The reason it sounds very familiar is Gracie's the better half of the Sanders family, I'd say. I worked here at City of Temple Terrace during the 90s. I was a building inspector. I was also a plans examiner. And I built that house there at 7810 River Ridge Drive. I've coached Little League, and with Gibby's one of my ball players, but so we're active enough in the community. And I can just tell you that you're tripling the amount of paths in there, not just for walking. And there were burrowing owls up there on the original development. And how many trees did they leave when they developed for the subdivision going in there? Right. And riding bicycles over the roots of all these sensitive trees and stuff, that's for you guys to deal with. I've had people drive from the Keys to take photos of pileated woodpeckers. That there's a few that are out there. Now, if this isn't going to have any impact on any of the wildlife, fine. However, it doesn't have to be 3 times the miles of paths in there. And other areas of Temple Terrace don't seem to be developed within earshot of that piece of property. Within River Hills Drive, down there in the River Hills Park. That has potential for bike paths. But if this is going to be in some sort of, if it was just Sunday afternoon bike rides is one thing. But under the management and control of a third-party biking group, it's questionable. And I can see I'm running low on time. So just bear in mind, there has to be the impact on the community needs to be drawn throughout the community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Put my mask back on.
That's the final request I have. Are there other members of the public who wish to speak on this item? If not, I'm going to close the public portion of this meeting. Mr. Langfeld, would you care to, well, is there another presentation prior to taking questions for you? I know we have some questions. Okay, well then, Mr. Langfield, council members, do we have questions for Mr. Langfield? I'm sure we do. I know I have some. So, council member Schister?
Thank you. Good presentation. I did have one question. Does anybody remember which locations were on this paper?
Yeah, this is the preserve.
One's a preserve. Where was the other one?
Morris Bridge. the
Morris
bike
Bridge.
route.
Okay, all right, good. Thank you. That's important. I had a couple questions. You may not be able to answer this. You probably won't be able to, but given the construction that's going on up there, and given the sensitivity of the environmental, the animals and so forth, who has been consulted to see what kind of pressure that's going to put on the overall ecology of the preserve going forward? I mean, we're going to be dragging backhoes and everything else back there very, very quickly if they're not already there.
Well, like I said, when I first spoke to this, I walked the site previously with Shane and Mike from Natural Trail Builders. Also accompanying us was an environmental scientist who is a member of Swamp and who's involved in their trail construction. And his role in the trail building is to locate trails in a manner where they provide minimal impact to the environment that's there. They look for, tortoise burrows. When they build the trees, and Shane and I have had conversations about this, they don't cut down trees to build trails. They build trails around trees. They may need to move a tree that's already fallen, but they don't cut down trees to build trails. They work with the environment that's there to build trails that fit within the environment that's there in a manner that is in parallel with the environment, not in conflict with the environment.
Okay. Follow-up question to this, and again, if the Swamp people are here, what is the anticipated or usual usage on a daily basis for this type of a scenario? 20 riders, 10 riders? What has been their club's experience?
Maybe help with this one? You can come up to the podium.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Shane Richardson, President of Swamp Mountain Bike Club. And would you state your question again?
On what is your experience with the usage of a park such as this? Would you expect 10 people on a weekend, 5 people during the week at any given point in time? What given the number, the size of your club and the attraction that it generates, what would you expect if you're doing a business plan? You said, well, I'm going to have 15 customers a day. What would be your answer to that?
So this particular concept will draw people from the local area. It's not a destination trail, meaning that we're not going to have people traveling all over the place to ride here. It's going to be for the folks in the area. And as far as usage is concerned, we look at usage at other similar trail systems. And we actually don't maintain a similar trail system in size and scope as this one. Most of them are much larger. But we do have friends with Ocala Mountain Bike Association who maintains a very similar trail system as this in Mount Dora. And there's about 2.5, 3 miles worth of trail there. And in a given weekend, they may see maybe 10 to 20 people on the trail. And granted, they also have disc golf and hiking paths and all that stuff throughout their area too. But as far as actual off-road cyclists, about 10 to 20 on a weekend. During the week, a lot less. And the best way to describe that is that there are these much larger properties that the off-road cycling community goes and actually travels to on the weekends. Alafai River State Park, Bomboyet Scrub Preserve, Santos, which is part of the Marjorie Harris Carr Greenway, Croom Wildlife Management area, and then also Lois Hart Park out in Lakeland. And the majority of the ridership travel during the week or weekends to go to these places. A lot of folks are in this area are looking for something that they can do after work, in the mornings before they go work, and on the weekends if they can't get away to these other trail systems that they travel to. So I would say, from our research on usage, that's a pretty fair amount on the weekends, about 10 to 20 people, off-road cyclists. During the week, probably maybe 5 to 10, if that. I hope that answers your question.
That's good. That's good. Okay, that's all I have for now.
Councilmember Chambers.
Thank you. I don't know which one's going to answer this question, but it was mentioned intersections between the walking trails and the biking trails. Do we know how many intersections? It's kind of hard to see from the map.
Well, I believe, I think it would be safe to say, since the trail system hasn't been laid out yet, that it's tough to come up with an accurate number.
So what everybody is seeing right now is just a conceptual idea. It's not the actual final trail layout, and that's very important. So when we come to the table with an idea like this, we like to put what could be potentially the potential routes. It doesn't mean that it will actually be the routes when activation happens on a property. And so as far as crossings go, we work with one of our trail builders and a lot of people in the community to make sure that trail crossings are either non-existent or they're minimal. And if there are trail crossings at all, there is appropriate signage that does say, slow down, be aware, and that sort of thing. And we do have those type of trails implemented in other property, or trail signs implemented at other properties that we help to maintain. And so we will do everything that we can to make sure that they do not intersect with the current footpaths that are there. Like I said, minimal to no crossings is what we're shooting for. And when I say minimal, 1 to 2 crossings, no more than that. It's also very important to, when you look at the conceptual stuff, is, it's kind of hard to look at the scale on a GPS map. But what we also try to do, especially when there's multiple user groups on a property, is we try to have at least a 12 to 15 foot barrier between each of the pathways, or not actual physical barrier, but we try to build things with at least 12 to 15 feet in between each of the pathways that the different user groups use. Generally, it's usually more than that. And what we've done in the past is we've been able to work with other state and county agencies to be able to help reforest areas, to be able to create natural barriers between certain areas of the trail that may come close together. And we've had pretty good success with that up at Croom, working with forestry on some of the sections up there. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Is that all, Mr. Chambers? So let me ask a piggyback question on his. You almost said it, but not quite. So I'm assuming there'll be no sections of trail that are shared between pedestrians and bicyclists?
Correct. This property is too small to be able to have shared pathways between hikers and walkers, and then also off-road cyclists. There are other properties like Flatwoods Wilderness, Trout Creek that somebody has mentioned, which is a Southwest Florida Water Management District flood control property. And that has a pretty decent, extensive off-road trail system there that is completely multi-use. But again, when in situations like this, and Mount Dora is like this as well, they are not, they're not multi-use paths. They're all separate.
Vice Mayor Donahue?
Okay, thank you. I like the word compromise that we heard earlier, and it sounds to me that, when I was looking at this map, I thought, wow, that's an awful lot of lines here. But then it's what you're telling me is that this is the potential of where these are going. These are not already laid out.
Absolutely not.
And the areas, is it possible that the question marks are wetlands that will not ever be touched?
Those question marks were areas that we needed to figure out whether they were wetlands or not. And we worked with a GIS map expert to look at the elevation contours, and then also look at LiDAR floodplain information. And those particular areas are wet all the time.
Okay, so they would never be
Yeah,
They will never
absolutely
be
not.
used.
They will never have anything developed in them.
So the size and the scope is really going to be determined once you get in there, because you
Correct.
haven't really laid out
Right,
any.
the actual pathway is not laid out yet, and generally, the whole process, there's a 12-step process that we go through on our end, and as part of an agreement that we, that we also put into place with the land managers that we work with. And one of those things is that we go out and we take the little pink or yellow or orange flags, and we flag the route that we are going to be able to think that is going to work the best. And then we take staff and also generally an environmental scientist to be able to walk that pathway before we actually implement any type of shovels in the dirt. And then the trail builder will also go through that entire process and look at where they can minimize, and how to minimize impact in certain areas, and then also how to route the trail, the single track trail. And that's something that's very important to understand too, that the trails that we build are actually narrower than general footpaths. So the footpaths that are there now are much wider than what we're actually thinking about being able to implement. Single track generally for green and blue difficulty trails are no more than 24 inches wide. Over time, trail creep happens, but we try to minimize the trail creep as much as possible with community education and then also appropriate maintenance strategies. Does that answer your questions?
It does. I just have one last question.
Yes.
Of the trails that you have recently, well, I'm not going to put recent on it, what are the animals that are still living in the space? I know Croom is one that you've mentioned several times. And what did you see and what are you still seeing when you're traveling? I know my son used to run up there, so he was running, but then our buddies, they would go biking at the same time and they never saw each other. But that is a huge
Yes,
park.
it is.
Right. So the goal here is to keep the walkers and the bikers separate, but the big goal seems to be to make sure that there's still places for all these little critters. So what are you seeing once your paths get built out and they're starting to use? What are you seeing in those parks?
So we see, and I'm gonna use Bomboy Scrub Preserve as a talking point, and then Croom as well, because even though Bomboy Scrub Preserve is a much larger property, it is also an ELAP property. And in that management plan, it was determined that it could be feasible for multi-use. And the off-road cycling portion is only in one section of the almost 900 acres of that particular property. So we don't recreate on all of it. And one of the things that we see on a regular basis is, we have people on our social media and then also on the community social medias posting pictures of animals all the time. We're seeing, all different types of species of snakes, gopher tortoises, bald eagles. There was actually a potential scrub jay sighting at Bomboy Scrub Preserve not too long ago. I don't know if that was confirmed or not. But the reality is that, and I know people are very concerned about the wildlife. We are too. And that's one of the things that with the 25-year history of us working with other land management agencies, including DEP and Forestry, Swift Mud, and then also Hillsborough County Conservation Environmental Lands Management, is that the impact on flora and fauna is consistently being evaluated. And those agencies have folks that come out and look and just to make sure that the approved recreation types are not causing any undue harm to the environments that people are recreating in. And we work closely with those agencies to make sure that the impact is as minimal as possible. And with Bomboy at Scrub Preserve, the amount of wildlife that is captured there by the community is really phenomenal. And yes, it's a much larger property than this. But one of the things about our involvement with being able to help build and maintain natural surface trails for people to recreate on, and this is very important too because we also do it for multi-use, endeavors, is that we want people to be able to continue to have the natural wild experience that they've always had on the properties, while being able to potentially help enhance the trail experience, and be able to provide off-road cyclists another opportunity in the areas that they've been wanting us to advocate for, to be able to have a potential for that type of recreation.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Councilmember Chambers.
Yeah, thank you. I have two more for now, but two more for somebody. I think this one's probably for Mr. Langfield. It was mentioned about some special events out there, some bicycle classes or something. If that were to happen, does that go through your normal permit process?
If it were an event put on by us, Parks and Recreation, it would go through our regular special events process to put on an event. If Swamp were to come to us and say, hey, we want to host a family outing on, a weekend in March, it would go through a permit process with us to put that event on through our normal permitting process.
Okay, thank you for that. And also, it was mentioned about the length of the agreement. The agreement is 30-day notice for both parties with or without cause, and that's correct.
I did not bring a copy of the agreement with me. I would have to go back.
Well, I was reading it, so yeah, that's
That's what it says, yeah.
right. So both sides understand, with or without cause, if something goes wrong, or if it's not going to expectations on either side, 30 days and
Correct.
it's over. Okay.
And also, I just for a little bit more information for you, I just finished the new agreement between Conservation Environmental Lands Management and Swamp for Bomboy at Scrub Preserve. And as far as the actual term of that agreement is concerned, that was developed into a 3-year agreement with the 30-day language involved with that.
Other questions, council members? Councilmember
One real
Schuster?
quick one. Carl, what are the other closest local mountain bike opportunities? Trout Creek?
Morris Bridge,
Morris
again,
Bridge.
Shane may be better equipped to answer this one. What's close by?
Yes, so Morris Bridge, Trout Creek, and Flatwoods are the closest mountain bike opportunity for the community in Temple Terrace, and then also the surrounding community, New Tampa and so forth.
Thank you.
The other ones are over at least 45 minutes away.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a couple questions for both of you, actually. I'll start with you, just so because I think the rest of them are for Carl, so that way you can. So talk to us, please, about the actual construction process. There's been mention of backhoes and front-end loaders, and I know that's not permissible on ELAP property. So talk to us about how this construction will actually occur and what type of equipment will be used.
Yes, absolutely, and I'm going to defer to the trail builder that we're going to potentially be working with to be able to answer any trail building specific questions. Mike, do you mind answering those questions, please?
Hello, Mike Cole, the owner of Natural Trail Building. I did it for about 15 years in Croom and other places as a volunteer, and then it just kind of turned into a job, which is nice because I love it. But just as a reference, my nickname is Nature with Mike, so part of my whole being is to try and make sure that the nature's preserved. So what I do is I do everything by hand. We don't bring in any equipment. Hand tools is all that is used. We only use the natural materials. We're only using dirt and stuff like that. Try not to ever build anything out of wood even. In Croom, actually, we're not even allowed. We only use natural materials, what's there, what we can find. So everything's built by hand. There wouldn't be any machinery going in there whatsoever.
When you say by hand, I mean, what some people call hand tool and other people, I mean, chainsaws, I would assume you would,
Well, really, the only thing that chainsaws would ever be used for is, as I think was mentioned earlier, is if there's a fallen tree or something, because we're not removing any trees or anything like that. That's not the way I do it. There are companies that do that. There are companies like you can bring in from outside that do come in with equipment and stuff like that, but that's not my philosophy, and that's why the name of it is Natural Trail Building.
that was, thank you. I think that's it. Do
Okay.
you have any questions
I
of
guess-
Michael? He's up.
Yeah, my only question is, how close are these trails now? And how close will they be to the homes that back into the preserve?
Well, that's a different question. Hang on, let me
Okay.
finish, and then if we have
Okay.
follow-up. So I think that's good for the trail construction. Thank you. We talked about this already. So, Carl, I have a couple things. I think you're good. At least take a break anyway.
If you guys have any further questions.
We might. Don't go far. Don't leave.
Yeah.
Carl, there's a couple things that, I read the proposed agreement, and if I read correctly, the city has to approve the proposed path
Yes, sir.
before any construction is.
Before any construction happens, even after a trail is built, if they want to move it or modify it or change it, no trail construction, no trail modification can take place without city approval first.
Okay, so whatever path they deem is good, you or your staff would go out there and walk it?
We would walk it, we
They
would
would have,
check and
you
make
would have
sure
to
that-
bless this
that
and.
we're, yes.
Okay, and obviously you heard our concern about intersecting, and I don't know if it's completely possible to do without intersecting, but that would certainly be preferable.
I
because-
asked this question on several conversations that I've had with Shane. The one thing that I want to stress mostly is that at no point in time will trail space between the existing hiking paths and any built cycling paths be shared. I believe Shane had mentioned that there may be minimal crossings where the bike paths and the hiking paths intersect, but they will minimize that. I believe the number he used was 1 to 2 crossings. But anywhere that crossings do occur, signage is up alerting the cyclist that there is a hiking trail crossing approaching and that they're to be aware, to slow down, and, to watch for hikers.
So one of the things that's been a concern, and I think rightfully so, and this may fall more on the city than on Swamp. There's room out there for parking, but there aren't that many parking spaces because it's sufficient for what we do out there now, but it won't be sufficient for what might do out there. My concern, and there's room, I mean, there's plenty of room, but there's not designated parking. I'm concerned that if we don't create designated parking, that people will make their own, and then that can be dangerous because now people are backing up in all directions. People are parking on the sides of the road. There should be enough room that they won't need to park on 78, but I can't see there being, well, hang on a second, I can't see there being enough people that could fit on that trail to require people to go into the neighborhood to park. That seems like, you could put 50 cars out there before you got to that point. But I do think maybe we should, if we do this, that we should consider creating some designated parking lanes and stumps or something to kind of bring some order to parking. Even if we only have 8 or 10 cars out there at a time, you know how people park when you give them lines. You know how they're gonna park if you don't give them lines. And it is true that anytime you mix pedestrians and cars, somebody's backing up because they've got their truck with their bikes in the back, and there's pedestrians from the neighborhood walking to do the walking trail. Pedestrians and bikes or cars don't do well together. So I don't know if we could put a walking path or some parking, there's a little bit of expense, but I think if we move forward, that might be something we should do. I think that's it. Any other questions, comments for staff? Or-
Just a
Go ahead,
question about
Vice Mayor, yeah, go ahead.
Just a question about the proximity. I don't know how close the paths are now. I mean, do people walk out of their backyards now and right into the preserve, or do they have to come out and
There
around?
is the homes that border the preserve to the east. There is a significant gap untrailed. I believe most of that area is wetland, that is behind the houses on the east side of the preserve, which would not be conducive to building trails in any way. And as in my conversations with Shane and Mike, as we were talking about how we would develop and how we would lay out these trails, that I didn't want anything that was going to be anywhere near the backyards of the houses that are on the east side of this property.
Okay, thank you, that answered my question.
Council members? Okay. Very good, thank you, Mr. Langfield. Any last comments? Okay, thank you. All right, council members. What's your pleasure?
Well, I'll start. I really do agree with the speaker who said we need to add more to what we offer to the city. But at the same time, you don't want to take away from what the residents have. So we have to come up with a compromise here. We have to grow and change, otherwise we'd still be this 1925, 13 houses neighborhood, which I'm sure, I see the original resident back there, and he knows what I'm talking about. So I'm in favor of this in that it sounds to me like you're really going to try hard to preserve what we have while adding something. So that word compromise keeps coming to my mind. And I'm really happy to know that we have to approve the trails. Because I'd hate for us all to hear all this grand talk tonight and then find out next month or 2 months from now that, it doesn't look anything like we heard. And I don't, please don't misunderstand me. I don't know you. I like your nickname, though. That's appropriate. So I think I will be supportive of this only because it serves two groups of people and can be made to compromise. So when I looked at the map and I saw those lines, I agree. I was like, oh my gosh, there's no room for anybody walking at all. But you made me feel better by your actual comments, that this is just basically where that could go and not the trail. So that makes a difference. So that's my comment. If that's all you're looking for, I'll give you that.
It is appropriate at this point for somebody to make a motion.
Well, then
but
I
We can
will-
also have discussion if that's the
Yeah,
council's.
whatever council, if you need a motion to get this subject going, I'll be happy to make that motion.
Well,
If
you'll make
not,
a
I'm waiting.
motion, we will discuss it.
Then I move to approve the project.
Do we have a motion?
That is a motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. We have discussion on the motion. Councilmember Schister.
Okay, first of all, staff, thank you. Very thorough job in the analysis and the investigation. To Shane at the Swamp Club, very knowledgeable. You came with a lot of information, and the way that you presented it shows that you guys really care and try to do what you say you're going to do. And to that, for that, I appreciate it. I got some concerns, though, and the concerns deal with the wildlife. I know that if some of those foxes disappear, my grandchildren are going to have a heart attack on me. And the problem is that the property is landlocked. We're forcing, you go out to Flatwoods, and if there's activity here, it can move over to here. It's got someplace to go. With this design of the property, and it's nobody's fault, you've got the building construction from the I can't remember the name of the development now, the golf course, okay? So they can't go, the animals can't go that way. The river's on the other side, and that wraps all the way around, essentially. So it's a landlocked piece of property that there's nowhere the animals to move to. The plants, I don't think they'd be impacted too much, although a 24-inch bike path seems awful narrow to me. That's going to be a little problematic. I think that the path creep would be quite significant, and that would cause its own set of problems. But I have real concerns with the landlocked nature of the property. There's nowhere for it to go. It's just going to disappear. If it doesn't get killed, it's going to migrate across the river or someplace else. And I know that I've used it to go watch the wildlife. You just sit there, and there's stuff everywhere. It's all over the place. There are other options available locally for people to go to. I realize it's not within Temple Terrace, but if you're a biking enthusiast, you're going to go where you need to go to take care of it, to do that. Let's see. I had a couple of other questions. I do like the fact that there's a 30-day window for any type of cancellation. If this were to be approved, that we would have an opportunity to fix it and get out of it. However, by then the damage will probably already been done to the wildlife in the area. So I don't know. At this point, I don't think that I can support the motion. I don't. It's just it's too risky. The landlocked nature of it makes it a detriment to the very essence of the preserve that we built back there. I'll stop there.
Other discussion on the motion? Councilmember Chambers.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, staff. Thank you, Shane and your group. Thank you for the neighbors coming out, all that. You know, I do know a little bit about this property. I was part of the development 10 years ago. And I have to agree with one thing, that the promises made to the neighborhood was not that it would never change, but it would follow the management plan. And the trails were were always part of the management plan, but it was not specified bike trails. I think that since FCT approves it and it's part of a trail system, I'm good with that. I'm also going to support it, but I would also like to, before the trails are put in, once the final design, I would like the neighbors of the neighborhood to have some kind of, I won't say oversight, but to be part of a meeting, to be shown the trails, just like we want to be shown the trails when they're actually planned, if that could happen out there. So the neighbors can see where the trails go before they're put in and approved. And if we don't like what we're seeing, then 30 days. So, but I will support this agreement.
I have one modification to the motion, if you would consider it. In the proposed agreement, in the final portion of it, it talks about the insurance that the Swamp Mountain Bike Club would carry for this trail liability insurance. And the comment, if I'm correct, says that they will provide the city upon request with a copy of that insurance policy within 5 days of approval. I would like that changed to they will provide it, not upon request. And let me find the insurance, section 13. Paragraph D says certificates of insurance for all policies or a copy of the policy, if requested by the city, shall be furnished to the city's attorney and city manager no later than 5 business days after effective date of this agreement. I'd like to strike out the part that's in parentheses where it says if requested by the city, and just say that we want to see the.
So would you go along with approve the proposal upon the presentation of the certificate of insurance?
Well, with the following modifications, section 13, paragraph D, strike the parentheses portion that says if requested by the city. If you're amenable.
I'm in agreement. with that. I think you've said it.
Would you,
Do you
what I
have the
need-
motion?
No, I need
Ms.
you to
Mooney?
say that you're going to modify the motion. now.
I will modify the motion to, I want to make sure she has the wording.
Include providing the city with a copy of the insurance policy?
Yes, within 5 days.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have amended motion. Do we have an amended second?
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor signify with aye.
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 And nay, those opposed?
No.
Nay. Motion passes 3-1. Councilmember Schuster voting no. Council business, carryover business from previous council meetings? Okay, new business and board reports. I have one thing, and I hate to do this to you because I know we're running late, and I knew we would. As you know, the county commission is in the middle of an effort to redraw their districts, which they are required to do every 10 years with the new census. They can't not do this. This is a legal requirement. I would like to craft a letter to the county commission, at least voicing our preference, but I don't presume to do that without your agreement to what our preference is. I personally, and after talking to the city manager and a great number of citizens, and I know you have too, I think it is beneficial for our city to remain at least mostly in District 2. And the reason I say that is because we are more aligned with the other communities in District 2, which are New Tampa, Onondaga, parts of Seffner, Lutz, Carrollwood, Odessa. I think we have much more in common with those communities than we do with the other communities in District 3, which are mostly urban core communities down into Progress Village and so forth. And I'm concerned that our voters, our voice in the election stands the chance of getting lost in District 3 because we're very dissimilar from some of these other communities in District 3. Now, none of these maps are perfect, the proposed maps. The one that in my mind comes the closest is map G. This is submitted by Commissioner Harry Cohen. And map G puts almost the entire city of Temple Terrace in District 2. One of the added advantages to map G is that it moves the southeastern boundary between District 2 and District 3 down to the Harney Canal instead of straight out Harney Road. That gives us half of that census tract, and that now includes M&B Products, the 301 Industrial Park, Amazon, and all of that. I had already spoken to some people at the county about moving that line, and apparently Commissioner Cohen had the same idea, or somebody spoke to him because that line is moved on this map. On map G, the only portions of Temple Terrace that are not in District 2 are where we're sitting tonight. The small sliver that's south of Fowler Avenue and west of 56th Street. There's a possibility that we could adjust that line because the next census blocks go from 56th Street to 52nd, which would solve that problem. What I don't know is there's a lot of moving parts to this, and I don't know how that affects congressional districts, school board districts, and other, whether that, because they don't want to skew, they want to try to maintain the integrity of the other districts too. So the only drawback I see to map G, and it has been noted by some in the community that they would prefer that we be in the same district as the USF campus. This map does not do that. However, the map that does do that doesn't give us the eastern boundary that we need, which in my opinion is more important. The other thing to remember with the USF campus is the faculty and staff at USF don't live on campus. They live largely in Temple Terrace and New Tampa, Lutz, and Onondaga, and that's where they vote. So I think there's no perfect map, but in my opinion, map G is the closest. And with your permission, I'd like to express that to the county commissioners with the possible caveat that we take in the other census blocks west of 56th Street, which would give us the remaining sliver of our city.
Another thing to consider is that G, and I agree with you on G, if several of these maps remove our ability to have a representative on the BOCC. In other words, we might be lumped in with Tampa, we might be, but we wouldn't, right now, we know that we have someone who would represent us as well as other parts of Tampa. Plant City, as you see over in 4, they're basically not touched at all. And 1 and 3 don't really shift all that much, except that they cut us in half. So this is the one that keeps us intact the strongest. And I would have advised G as well, so I'm glad we agree on that. So I would support a letter or any other transmittal that lets the BOCC know that that is the one that we support. I know that several, like you say, there've been so many revisions, and I don't think it would hurt for us to ask that little sliver, because that little sliver is important to us, and it may not mean much difference to 3, but it just as a point of saying to the neighbors in this strip here, you belong to us, and we want, now, we're not gonna give up on them, obviously, we're gonna.
Well, that's my
Represent.
intent, as long as you guys give me consensus on this, it is my intent to explore the option of taking those census blocks in also.
Yeah.
But again,
You have to start somewhere.
I haven't looked at all the other layers to see if I'm splitting a school district or a congressional
Right.
district or something. So,
Right.
I have,
Councilmember Schuster?
thank you. I have one concern, one question.
Sure.
They don't have to listen to us, and
Oh, they don't, and they probably won't.
yeah, they probably won't, no matter what they're gonna do. My question is, and this is more of an impact, are we better off with having 2 potential county commissioners that would listen to us, or are we better with one stronger?
Well,
And I'm torn with it. I don't disagree with what you're saying.
I hear you.
But I deal with these individuals in other areas, and the individuals in play are approachable, and they recognize the value to what we have to say, and they realize that. And I'm just wondering if we're not better off with 2 strong as opposed to 1 strong, or 2, and I don't know that, I don't really have a feel for whether it's gonna matter to anything, but because I go back to some of the actions that the county commission has done, and it really didn't make a bit of difference, because it was very few items that there was any contention to. It was all pretty much down party lines, and if it wasn't unanimous. So I don't know, that's just my thought. Sometimes it's better to have 2 people in your pocket, for lack of a better way to say it, than just one.
Please, let's not do
Okay,
that.
but I'm just
Don't
saying,
put that in the minutes.
Well, okay,
Well,
Poor choice of
that's a good observation, Mr. Sister, and thanks for bringing it up for discussion. My feelings on that are, first of all 7 of the county commissioners, even the ones that don't, that have been very good to Temple, city of Temple Terrace. They're all been allies to us. My feelings are, this is, what we're talking about here is mostly about elections every 4 years.
Right.
And to give us the most influence on those elections, we want the most of our citizens voting for that commissioner, because there's 27,000 of us here. And
I think you nailed it. That's really what this
it's
is
really
all
about the elections, and if we're split, then our influence to the elections is split as well. And that's my, because I've thought about this, the city manager and I have talked about this a lot too.
Didn't really look at it from an election perspective. I was looking at it as more of a day-to-day business operations.
But I really think the elections are that's the real.
Okay, all right.
I think the onus is on us to reach out to all of the county commissioners if they're getting ready to go down a path that is not good for us. And we're not going to stop with one, because,
Yeah, they've all been good. I mean,
Yeah, they've been good, that's what I'm saying, they've been good to
yeah,
us.
been very good
It's
to
not
us.
gonna sink if we wound up in district, I mean, they're all good to us, but. Mr. Stevenson, you and I have talked about this. Are you in agreement with the plan that we are talking about here?
I think that's a good move and a good decision to stay with District 2 and Map G.
Okay, so you guys are good. I'll write a letter then. Okay, very good. Other new business board reports? You have 34 minutes to get to. Anything else? Other new stuff? City manager's report?
Mr. Mayor, I don't have anything to report to you.
Okay. When you guys are contemplating this mountain bike thing, would you, well, we'd kind of like to see the trail map before you move forward with it.
Well, it has always been contemplated for Swamp to work.
Yeah, I know, but we'd kind of like to have some eyes on it too, so
We certainly hear the neighbors, and we'll certainly involve them
and
as well, as Mr. Chambers.
Yeah, I think so, and if you'd also at least consider the idea about the parking, and see what, maybe we can at least think about that.
Yeah, and the insurance, I noticed the same thing that you noticed, and
Yeah, no big deal, we got it.
we're in receipt of a insurance certificate already.
Okay, good. Councilmember Chambers?
Sorry, I wanted to remind everybody about the King High Homecoming Parade, Thursday, 6 o'clock, Fairway number 1 at the Country Club, or the ball fields. Come out and support your high school.
Very good. And
60th anniversary,
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
Okay, good deal, thank you. Anything else, Mr. Stevenson? City Attorney? Okay, anybody? Anybody? Okay, we're adjourned.